Welcome back to Let's Talk Business. I'm your host, James Price. And today our guest, well, he's a farm boy from Wollongong in country New South Wales. And over the last 20 years, he's built one of the largest agribusiness service businesses in Australia. Gerard Hines, great to have you on board.
Thanks for having me, James. Good to be here.
It's a pleasure. You've been doing a bit over the last 4 decades, Gerard. Thinking about those 4 decades, the first couple, what did you get about during that time to prepare you for an eventual build of Delta Agribusiness, which is the business I just referred to?
Well, I grew up on a family farm, James, one of 5 children, and it was a partnership with my father and his brother, and I always thought I'd be a farmer. And when I was about early 20s, got offered an opportunity to go and work for a small fertiliser business at Cootamundra, and I got encouraged by my parents and others to have a crack at that. And believe it or not, I was a pretty shy young fella, and I was pretty insecure. Anyway, I did that, and I really, really enjoyed it. And what I enjoyed was the competitive nature of retail and trying to find an angle. And then a few things happened. I had a nasty burns accident in 87. I had 30% burns fighting a bushfire. And that delayed my going back on the farm because I had to wear pressure garments. And
so 30% burns.
Yeah.
That was as a result of a bushfire in the area?
Yeah, down in New Cootamundra was one of those catastrophic days. We had an accident on the back of the fire truck with some petrol. And anyway, a few months in the burns unit and long recovery, but it sort of delayed my thought of going home on the farm because of the recovery process. I then got an opportunity, a guy called Brian O'Malley and his son Paul, and they had a large agricultural wholesale distribution business in South New South Wales. And he was actually one of the people that encouraged me to take that first role. And then
Is that right?
Yeah, and they approached me and said, look, they were wholesale, and back then it was before the generics and before the wave of Chinese cheaper products coming through, but they could see that coming. So they realised that their margins probably would be squeezed at some stage, and they decided they needed to be in retail. So I was their first experiment. So they asked me, would I be prepared to go to this little place called Monteagle, just north of Young. They wanted to buy this business from a guy called Bob Chandler, who was an eccentric old guy, wonderful guy. And he only wanted to sell to them, and he was one of their larger wholesale customers. So I said, yeah, look, Brian, I'm happy to have a crack at that. That sounds like a bit of fun. Good opportunity. And he said, but there's one rule. He said, to do this, you've got to have some equity. And I said, okay, well, I haven't got any money. I was 23. How can I afford that? How do we do that?
So he's wanting you to buy into the business there and then?
Yeah, up front. He wanted skin in the game.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up with his son and we knew each other, family friends, so he trusted me and knew me. But he said, that is fine. He said, I'm going to personally guarantee your loan to take 25% equity.
Wow.
Because I want you to really have skin in the game and have care about it. So, and back then, I borrowed $78,500 from Westpac, right? And that was a lot of money back then if you think about it.
Absolutely.
In today's terms. It was a big thing for him to do that for a non-family member. And
Gerard, this was back in 1988? 88, right?
But what,
76,
yeah,
78,000.
Yeah. The reason I'm telling you this is because it's sort of galvanised my and our thinking later on with how we set Delta up. Because one of the hardest things for young people is to get a start, right? It's very difficult to get your first piece of equity or to buy a house or anything when you're young, particularly in today's environment.
Why was that important for him at that time?
I think he just didn't want to buy this business. Got to remember, Bob Chandler was one-man band, right? He ran it.
This was the business they were buying.
Yeah. And they just didn't want to buy this business and not have someone there in 3 or 4 or 5 years because, it was really important for them to make that first one work because then they went on and did more of that. And I just think he wanted me to commit, really. I was young. I was 23 or 24 at the time. He just wanted me. He probably, I don't know whether he thought I was a bit
young and loose or something. You might be here one day and gone the next.
Yeah, that's right. Who knows?
So how did you feel about that though, Gerard?
I wouldn't say blindsided. I wasn't prepared for that, but I was excited by it.
Why?
I just thought that's what an amazing thing to be offered. I remember sitting down, took my father and my uncle just to meet with Brian to talk through it.
Yeah.
For a bit of get their opinion, and remember driving away from his house, and they said, "You'd be mad not to do this. This is an amazing opportunity." I mean, how many young kids get offered equity in a business, an opportunity to go into a business and be sponsored in with a personal guarantee? And you've got to remember, O'Malley's had a large business, a lot of credibility, a lot of market credibility. They were very well known. They were highly respected. And for them to put their faith in me was an honour. And I saw it that way. Yeah, you walk into those things, trembling a bit because you don't, everyone has a bit of self-doubt, and you wonder, how's this going to work, and will I get on with Bob? And will the customers accept me after dealing with him for 30 years? But he stayed for 3 years, right? So it was a very smooth transition.
Yeah.
And look, he needed someone, so he was old and getting frail, and it was a good combination.
So it worked for both.
It worked for both, yeah. So that was a game changer for me, and I really loved it. I got my teeth in that business, and then the following year I employed a guy called Chris Duff, joined me. Chris was an agronomist with a department who had recently moved to an advisory business in the area. I knew him socially, and anyway, long story short, he joined me the year later, and we were the first business to put an agronomist into a agri-retail business, certainly in the eastern states and certainly south of the cotton markets. And that was a game changer because when I got into this business at Chandler's, we were selling a lot of product, but there was no margin. Price was the only lever. And I'm thinking, how do we add more value? How do we get away from just price?
Yep.
And at the same time, the Department of Ag were reducing their funding, and they had kilometre limits on their agronomists, 150 k's a week, and at the same time, a lot of new molecules hit the market. So it became more complex for farmers to navigate, and the resources were going downhill. So bringing Chris in was a bit of a gamble in it was changing the model, but the trick is always getting the right people, right? And he was definitely the right person. Very, very good agronomist. And so initially my clients were a bit skeptical. They thought, who's going to pay for this? You're going to have to put your prices up, But once they saw the quality of the person and the information and the knowledge, they became a sponge. And the price mostly went out the window. It was, how do I get more of Chris's time?
So the product you were selling was fertiliser?
Farm chemicals.
Chemicals?
Yeah, animal health, general merchandise, all agri inputs.
And then Chris was providing advice and agronomy around that.
Yep.
So how did you deal with the issue of, is it independent advice or is it simply to sell the products?
Well, that was the challenge at the time. The department always saw themselves independent, right? And so bringing a commercial agronomist into a retail business, it was only ever going to work if you had the right person who was technically sound, but also treated every dollar like his own, and so credibility, right? And farmers they work that out very quickly.
Yeah.
If you're in it for a short-term buck, or there's there's recommendations going out that are compromised around another agenda, it's a very short road. You're not going to build a business like that.
Yeah.
So that was changing. And so our whole farm consulting business evolved from that, because we only had one of him at the start, and people couldn't get him for weeks. So then people offered to pay to get up the queue.
Yeah.
And so that's when we set up our consulting business. And so we've driven that right through our career. Fast forward a bit, in the early 90s, 94, O'Malley's sold their business into an IPO. If I don't know if you remember IAMA Limited.
IAMA, yeah, as part of the ag imports
group of independents
market.
got together around Australia to compete with the Wesfarmers, the Elders, and the like. And so we inherited IAMA as our partners, and we had their CEO and CFO on our board, and that was, for us as young people, that was great experience. They had a great front end business, great agronomy, great brand. They grew market share quickly, but it was a story of a lot of entrepreneurs being put together into a public company.
Yes, and
not really having the experience or disciplines at the back end of the business, and they had numerous operating systems. Essentially, the business grew rapidly, but wasn't sustainable. And in the end, Wesfarmers took them over in 2001.
Okay.
And Wesfarmers, who were only in the West at that stage, they were trying to get into the East. They had Dalgety, and they bought the IAMA business, and that's when they created Wesfarmers Landmark. So that was a stroke of luck for us, because by that stage, of course, Chris got equity the year after he joined me in 1990. So 94, I then 2001 was a I guess for us it was a great opportunity because we inherited Wesfarmers as partners, and then so Richard Gorder and Terry Bowen came onto our board because Richard was running the Landmark, the rural business under Michael Chaney. And what that taught us, those few years, and they gave us a lot of time, and we were a small business, but they gave us a lot of time, and they taught us about systems, disciplines, balance sheet, cash flow, and things that
none of that's front end, right?
No, and it was the things that were hurting my armour,
yes,
right?
yes.
Magnificent sales channel, brand, credibility, agronomy.
All window dressing,
lack
so
of
to speak.
lack of systems, disciplines, controls at the back end, and cash flow suffers and profit suffers, and so we didn't know it at the time, but that really set us up for being able to do what we did with Delta, because we had this public company experience where we saw how they manage and how disciplined they are at the back end and how anal they are on systems and processes and stock control and compliance. And most entrepreneurs and small business people, you don't know what you don't know. And you focus on growth and customers and all those good things. But unless you get that back end right, you leak it. Your leakage is enormous and you don't know it because you can't measure it.
Fascinating what you've taken us through there, because a small business in Monteagle, right, in southwestern New South Wales, you with ownership, Chris with ownership from day one.
Yep.
So you're risking that ownership, and you're running the business and learning the trade, and yet you're in a very competitive market and got swept up by major national players that are listed and large corporates like the likes of Wesfarmers.
Yes.
Do you often reflect on that and say, how unusual and lucky was that?
100%. 100%. And look, to the point where year before last now, that was last year, we got Richard Gorder back to our national conference. And Doug Rathbone, our chairman, who you probably know, is, created New Farm essentially.
That's right.
I interviewed Doug and Richard on stage at our national conference, and he was terrific, to give us the time because he was only just out of a Qantas AGM and under a little bit of pressure there, but at the time. But he reflected back on those days and remembered those days with a lot of clarity. What happened was we sold our half to Wesfarmers in 2003.
Yes,
and we did that because we had no growth strategy. We had 4 branches, 35 people, a great business that we were proud of. Our partner, being Wesfarmers, had 400 branches. They had every town covered. So we'd sit down and go, well, where can we go next at a board meeting? You can't. We've got every town covered. So when you're entrepreneurial and you're competitive by nature, and is that it? Is that as far as we can go with our career? Yeah, we're just going to manage this business. And we had a put option that we negotiated, which again, a long story why we did that, and that was going to expire, and so we actually exercised that put option.
So that option was to exit, right?
Yeah, any time within the first 3 years after Wesfarmers bought the business.
So what gave you the foresight to have negotiated that opportunity to exit so early in that journey?
Good question. I mean, when we sat down with Richard and Terry and David Goldsmith to nut the deal out, they were a pleasure to deal with. They were really good people, and that's a lot of respect for them. When it came to then putting what we agreed into a shareholders agreement, that took 9 months, and so that was an experience, my first big experience around that process.
A heavy transactional agreement,
and just the devil's in the detail, and it's companies will agree on, big companies will agree on a whole heap of high level terms, but then the lawyers try and claw it back, as much as they can. So you've got to have the best legal team on your side as well. So again, we brought Mallisons in for some key parts, which was expensive but vital. And we just weren't sure how we were going to fit into being entrepreneurs into this big corporate environment.
Yeah.
So we sort of negotiated that at the last minute as a bit of a parachute clause, I guess, in case we weren't enjoying the relationship. But as it turned out, we loved the relationship. But the fact that we got to a point where the valuation of the company was good. We were moving into a drought. The option was about to expire. We had no growth strategy. We thought, this is a great opportunity after 17 years to take something off the table for all that hard work. And we agreed to stay on and run it for them because we really liked and respected the Wesfarmers guys. And that was great. But 3 months later, out of the blue, they sold the whole landmark business to the Australian Wheat Board.
Yes, I recall that.
Remember that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And that was a disaster, really. I mean,
Yeah,
in my view, AWB were not good custodians of that business, but they had a lot of other issues. If you remember, just after that, the Author Food scandal and the coal inquiry.
Yeah, they weren't right for running a business at that time, I think, on reflection.
No, I think the strategy was good. They paid a lot for it, but when they didn't understand the business, and they moved a lot of the, in my view, the ex-Wesfarmers executives and people that had the long-term DNA in the business, moved them out over time after integration, and they lost a lot of IP, culture. And culture is something you've got to protect, and we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
But those years were not very enjoyable because they were the opposite culturally to the Wesfarmers in how they operated. And so we got to the point, Chris and I got to the point where we thought, well, our staff, and as you know, every business is about people, and having all the skill sets around the table. You got to have, like a footy team, you got to have everyone in every position that does their job, and we've all got different strengths and weaknesses. We could see we were going to start to lose some key people in our business because they were loyal to us, but they weren't loyal to the Australian Wheat Board.
Yeah.
Particularly with what's going on in the papers with the coal inquiry. So we decided, if we get fabricated, we start losing key people. It's like, you can't put that team back together. So we thought, if we're going to do something for ourselves, we've got to do it now. So we decided to chart our own destiny, and we went out and we set up DeltaAg from scratch on April Fool's Day 2006.
So in essence, you set up a competitor. Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And 15 of our people from that Chandler's business came across on day one, which caused a lot of emotion. And so so we knew we were going to be in a hostile environment. We had to be street fighters for a couple of years. It was interesting because the politics really came into play. Like suppliers, a lot of suppliers wouldn't deal with us because they liked us and they wanted to deal with us, but the politics on the national stage were far bigger.
So Joe, making that decision to go out on your own, so to speak, was that hard, or was it like rolling off a log because it was just the right decision?
I think it was the latter. Yeah, we had all that time under our belt. We had great close client relationships. We had a group of core people in that 15. So out of that 15, 8 came in as original shareholders. They're all different percentages, in line with their capacity. But that was critical that, because we said to those key people, we said the whole 15, if you want to be a shareholder from day one, you can be. And 8 put their hand up, said, yeah. And they all mortgaged their houses. They all went in, and it's a brave thing to do up against big competitors.
But you'd learned that strategy back in '88,
from
right?
Brian O'Malley,
Because Brian O'Malley had said, listen, I want 78,000 and I'll guarantee it, but you're investing 25% of the biz.
That's it. Yeah? And so the skin in the game. But these people were also our mates, and it was a really good blend of skill set around the table of all the different things we needed to run a new business. Now, we knew we'd be up against a hostile competitor or competitors. We knew we'd have to struggle with supply for a few years. We'd have to earn our stripes. But our view was, if we just focus on the client, and still our view, if we focus on the client and we add value, and I always say to my people, if we're not adding value, we're getting in the road. And I don't care how big someone's balance sheet is, if you haven't got the right people and you're not adding value, you won't have relevance to the customer. And that's where our inclusive shareholder model started.
So it started with 2 branches, right?
Young and Harden, both greenfields.
Yes.
What we did, we needed facilities up front, particularly fertiliser. So I knew Tom Keane, who was the CEO of GrainCorp, well at the time. And
I remember Tom. Yeah.
A few of the directors at the time were customers of ours, and so they had a business called Ag Plus, if you remember, which was fledgling and struggling, and because it wasn't their core business, and they didn't really understand it, and they'd admit that today. And I knew that they were struggling with certainly the one at Hard and the one at Young, Mymaroo, and so I approached Tom on the quiet and said, look, this is what we're going to do, but we really need fertiliser facilities, and we can't just start this business and not have infrastructure. Would you consider selling two sites to us. So I know you're struggling with them. And he said, well, look, yeah, he said, not opposed to that. He said, but he said, we don't need money. He said, what we want is equity in your business, in this business, because he said, we'd like to sort of see how you guys actually do this. And
Okay.
I said, yeah, well, that's good, Tom. Happy with that. But this time around, now we've finally got away from big JV. I've got all these other people I want to bring in. We want to have this inclusive model. My experience is public companies want at least 51%. He said, yeah. He said, that's right. That's normally right. He said, but we know you guys. We know you. You got the runners on the board. You got your own money in. We're happy to come in at a minority position.
Okay.
And then we can underpin any growth if you need more equity. And so I thought that's great. So they came in at 20% when we set Delta up. So we took 2 sites off them, and they put a bit of extra cash in to get up to 20%. One of the most important things we did, apart from the shareholder model, or the most important thing, was falling back on our Wesfarmers experience. We set up a really strong balance sheet from day one. So we raised a substantial amount of money so that when we started, we had 0 debt. So we owned all our vehicles, all our stock, all our plant and equipment, all our everything. Because yes, we were going into a drought that year, but also we knew that we could be unlucky to have two droughts in a row, which we actually did, 06, 07.
Yeah.
And we knew that we had to have capacity and headroom, not just to sustain a tough environment, but to have any growth potential we wanted. So we started with 0 debt, and right to today we've never had any debt in the business apart from working capital facility.
So that's amazing, isn't it? Like, what gave you the hindsight to do that? Was it that Wesfarmers experience about how they managed their balance sheet back when, or is it just that you're very risk adverse, or was it that you didn't have a lot of assets to borrow on at the time?
I think it was a bit of both. We could have. I remember my accountant saying, "Why are you doing this? If money's cheap, you can.
Yep.
Why are you putting so much in up front?" And my answer always was, "Well, look, we want to use our borrowing capacity if we do ever do that for growth, not for establishment. We don't want to lie awake at night waiting for it to rain when we're in our mid-40s and got kids at boarding school and everyone's gone out on the limb to do this. We need to make sure that we're solid." And it was a bit of both.
Yeah.
But also, if you think about our growth, a lot of our growth's come through those tougher years going forward, and you can't do that if you're leveraged. And leverage is not a friend of agriculture, in my view.
Yeah.
In our industry, it's a lot of working capital, a lot of stock, a lot of debtors.
Yes. Yes.
And also, to be competitive, you've got to also have the balance sheet to be able to take forward positions on product when markets are moving and prices are about
to manage the price and therefore the margin.
If you can see the market's rising, you need to be able to buy 3, 6, 9 months ahead. And if you're a business that's leveraged or don't have that capacity, you either don't have stock, or when you do get it, you're not competitive in the market.
Yes.
Right, and your margins get smashed. So we were very focused on that, but a lot of the growth came through because in tough times when assets get cheaper, people get a bit disillusioned. You can if you're quick and decisive like we were on our feet, and no bureaucracy and no layers of management, you can make decisions quickly. And if you've got the headroom in your balance sheet, you can grow quickly. You can position yourself. Another thing Brian O'Malley said to me years ago: position in gloom, prosper in boom. And there's a lot to that. If you think about, companies that grow rapidly, they typically have a very strong balance sheet. Yes. And they can move quickly. They're not reliant on leverage.
I think that's interesting. Position in gloom, prosper in boom, because even if you focus on non-ag business, the mining business, I've assisted clients through 2 global financial crises between 2010 and 2020. And the ones that really prospered were the ones with very strong balance sheets, because when the downturn was on, they were able to, maximize their position. But positioning in gloom also requires a degree of patience, right? I mean, and
absolutely.
It sounds like you and Chris in those early days and your team in putting your equity shareholders together and your people together had a degree of patience about getting those pieces together, yeah?
A lot of people think, because we've done over the 19, 20 years, we've done 23 acquisitions and 23 greenfield startups from scratch. So and sort of taken that business from the original 2 branches to 68 or 65 retail sites, roughly 500 people, 450, 500 people. And a lot of people think that we've just sort of grabbed everything that came our way, but that's not true. Like when you are growing quickly, a lot of stuff does come your way. Like
Yes.
you tend to be the go-to people, particularly if you're private and independent, because a lot of smaller independents want to stay away from a big corporate if they can.
So they're knocking on your door saying, hey, have a look at us.
A lot of opportunities come along, but we probably only did 1 in 10, if that. And we had a few rules around our board, and because that's the other thing we did. We set up a proper board from day one.
From day one, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can't have a big inclusive shareholder model. And think about it, we started with 8, we're now got 132 shareholders. And you have to separate shareholding from employment. Critical to do that.
How do you do that, right? Because my sense is that that's a bit of a barrier for business owners, certainly some that I deal with, in terms of going to the equity side of things for their key staff.
Well, I'm a big fan of it, and again, Brian O'Malley said this to me years ago. Never be scared of dilution, because dilution is good if it's for the right reasons, and we've always held that mantra. And our view of the world is, I don't care what my percentage is. It's what it's worth is what matters. And people get hung up on control and percentage.
Yes.
And so dilution is good in that it, and the inclusive shareholder model you're really talking about, it builds the balance sheet, because we don't sell shares, we issue new shares. So the money's going in. So if you get diluted on one side, but your value goes up by the same because the money's in the balance sheet.
Yes.
So you're really not being diluted. Builds the balance sheet. But again, it creates that skin in the game. So attracting and retaining the best people, which gives you the strategic advantage over the long term. It then creates care factor. Like people care about company assets. Yeah. They care about customer outcomes. They care about little things, the 1%ers, because they've got their house mortgage. They put their money in there, and if someone's they might have only put 50 grand in, but to them it's a lot of money. And so they're watching everyone else. They're watching what's going on. And we had shareholders across virtually every location.
Yeah.
And that's powerful in building a unified culture of accountability and care.
I think that four-letter word, care, I want to dwell on it, right? Because we value a lot of businesses. And today, just as much as we look at the financials, we look at the culture of the team and the strength of the team. And it's a unique aspect of culture in particular businesses, that care factor.
Yeah.
It's not in every business. And it's it's above and beyond what's expected. Yeah. If you look at a job spec for someone, care is often beyond that.
Absolutely.
And it's often given in an environment which could be a bit sticky. In other words, gee, I'm going against the grain here, or I'm saying something that's negative that should otherwise be positive, but I care enough to alert someone that there's a risk or an issue or whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And that feeds on itself. And going back to your question around, you talk about companies that don't want to dilute and bring other shareholders in.
Yeah.
Keeping employment and shareholding separate is really important, because if someone steals, doesn't matter if they're a shareholder, they're going to get sacked. You need to have the integrity that would happen if the shareholding wasn't there.
Yes.
That's number one. You have to be prepared as you grow that not everything you do will be 100% perfect, right? So when you're growing quickly, like we have been at 30% a year roughly, CAGR, we've got a few shareholders now, that we've just done the transaction with Elder, so I'm talking sort of post that, but pre that, sorry.
Pre
a month ago. We've got some shareholders that work for competitors now. Now, the beauty about it is when they're shareholders, getting the shareholders agreement is critical. You'd know that. And part of that is restraints. Now, restraints are not enforceable in employment contracts. They're basically just a bit of intimidation. And so they shouldn't be enforceable. Everyone
You
should
can't stop someone being employed for their profession.
No, that's
basically.
right. That's right. But once you've got a shareholders agreement and you've got equity and you've got people benefiting from the collective effort, they are enforceable. And so we had some common sense but sensible restraints that we've had to challenge a couple of times, and we're uphill both times, a few times actually. But what that does, it means that if someone does leave, there's a period where they just can't go out and just transfer hyper customers overnight. You're talking 18 months, 2 years. And so you will get the odd disappointment in time, but that is vastly outweighed by the power and the strength of letting your people invest. So we've got our rule with shareholding was you had to be there 12 months, and we had a window each year between October and December where an employee could apply
subscribe
to apply.
shares.
You can only
apply.
The other thing is you can only buy shares once.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So some people and that's because we all had that same opportunity. That's because you don't want the deepest pockets just over time buying shares every year and taking control. So.
But that forces one's decision, doesn't it? They have to decide: do I want to be a part of this or not?
Yeah, and
it's very interesting. Yeah,
and some people sit back for 3, 4, 5 years to get enough together to have a decent crack, right?
Yeah.
And then that's good. They might miss a bit of share price rise, but they get one decent bump. And then you can, the way it worked, the only way you could build your equity, and you could do this effectively, was through the dividend reinvestment plan, which we ran every year.
Yes,
and was well supported. And secondly, by other shareholders selling shares. So, and you just always, every year we'd get 5 or 6 or 7 shareholders who needed to or wanted to sell a few shares, but they got divorced or they got kids going to school or they want to buy an investment property or whatever. You don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. So we had preemptive rights in the shareholders agreement, and you could buy those shares in proportion to your existing holding, and then it goes round and round and round, and goes through several rounds, and then if you stay in, your allocation gets bigger each round. And a lot of people built their shareholding effectively through the years as well.
Very interesting. And in addition to the team, the staff, I can imagine that you were using equity opportunities in some of your acquisitions.
Another key strategic advantage, I think, of that model, out of those 23 acquisitions, I think there was only 1 or 2 where we didn't use equity. And we typically would use, we'd sort of start at 50%. We always wanted to be somewhere around 50% equity, so 50% cash.
If you're buying a business worth $5 million, there'd be 2.5 in cash and 2.5 in Delta shares.
Yep. And we'd use the DRP price for that particular year as the price.
Yeah.
For that, and that was consistent, and that was really effective for a few reasons. One is when there's equity involved, and you can demonstrate long-term growth, performance, and equity appreciation or value. It's not all about the headline price then, because if you model up, I'll give you an example. We had one business we purchased, large business. I won't say where, but the vendor took 50% equity, 50% cash, and it was like a lot of branches in this business. And within 3 years, the 50% in Delta shares were worth more than the whole business was transaction. Right?
Amazing, eh?
Yeah, plus dividends on top. So when you sit around at the negotiation table, and you always want to pay a fair price, but if you can use equity with an average of 20 to 30% growth, compound annual growth, even if you discount that to 15, to be conservative, that the value of that equity component grows over time. But the other thing it does, really important in acquisitions, as you know, is integrating businesses and making sure you keep the key people. That's where the goodwill is.
So you've got that transition that's relatively seamless.
You've got alignment. So if they're taking equity, they're still aligned. They're still got skin in the game. They still care about the business, and our forward path is aligned. And that's not just important for protecting the goodwill. It's important from the client's perspective, because the clients would then see, oh, hang on a minute, you haven't just sold out, to a big, large
You're
corporate.
Essentially the same business. I've still got an owner who I've been dealing with.
Yeah, the guy they've been dealing with still got skin in the game, even though it's a bigger pool.
Yes.
But he's got more capital.
Yeah.
and he's got more infrastructure, he's got more support behind him which means potentially better service, better prices. So it was a really powerful model in our growth using equity, and that's a lot of those shareholders. I mean, I'd have to guess, but out of the 132, I'd say a third, 40% of them came in through acquisition.
Did they? So
30% probably.
30% through acquisitions and the rest in staff.
Employees, from forklift drivers right through. So it wasn't a club.
So you've just sold the business, DeltaAg, to Elders. Tell us the size and shape of the business today. You've done 23 acquisitions.
Yeah. So look, it's about an 850 mil revenue business with 450 full-time employees. We obviously, the cornerstone of the business is farm advisory. So we've got 80 really talented agronomists across our network.
Yeah.
The majority of those people are doing what we call, farm consultancy or farm advisory, which used to be called fee for service. So again, back to how Chris started the model back in in '89.
That's grown and developed.
It's grown. So out of those, probably 50 of those agronomists are now got a full book of fee-paying clients that also support us through the business with the farm inputs. Because our view is, we don't let, in most cases, our clients decouple that model, because our core business is selling farm inputs, right? If farmer comes to us and says, well, I want to use Chris, but I want to pay for him and then I want to shop around wherever I like.
So you don't have me as a farmer cherry pick. I can't cherry pick.
No.
I got to be signed up to the whole model. Is that right?
That's it. Because, you can't, it's like you just can't charge enough for your time. And an hour in the paddock, there's an hour in the office as well, pretty much, right? So,
yep.
So there's no real money in farm consulting to any great level, but it's a really, really important component, because it's adding value to our clients. It's making them more money. It's the trust, the loyalty. It's helping farmers make the right decisions, which is our motto. And then if you've got the right people and the best people who are treating it ethically, like they do, because it's a long road.
You're in a highly competitive market, farm inputs market, farm services market, agribusiness services market in Australia is extremely competitive from my perspective.
Yeah.
It must have taken some fortitude to say, well, look, Mr. Farmer, unless you buy into our model, we're not too interested about servicing. Right?
Yeah, well, you can never be arrogant, obviously.
No.
But you're right. And it doesn't suit every grower. We've got a lot of clients, very good clients, that actually employ their own independent agronomists, and that's fine. We haven't got to service them, but we still get their business, so we're happy with that.
Yeah.
But to your point, you can't be all things to all people, and you have to be consistent. And we say no to clients sometimes. Say, look, we love your business, but that's not our model. Because if price is your only lever, you haven't got a sustainable model. And if you think about our business, like, because we focus so heavily on talent and good people, 69-70% of our total costs are HR are people, which is way above the industry average.
Huge.
So, and that's because we're a high service, high cost business, right? When I say that, we're still very competitive.
Yeah.
But you're not always going to be the cheapest, and you shouldn't always have to be the cheapest. If we're giving consistent, reliable advice on product supply and pricing trends, and we're saving our clients money through when to buy fertilizer, when to hang off, etc. When things are getting tight, making sure that when things run out, our loyal, good clients get supplied, and the shoppers are the ones that go to the bottom of the queue.
Yeah.
Right? Just normal loyalty relationship type things. And so if you get all that right, that really just develops that long-term trust, deep local relationships through, not just through the agronomist, but through the branch manager, through the procurement team, through everything we do has to all work together. When
we value businesses, people culture matters in terms of the performance of a business, but equally I've seen some of the strongest valued businesses that we've looked at are ones that are astute at choosing the clients that they want to deal with.
Yeah.
And actually making the hard decisions about not choosing those that they don't think they can service well because their model is not suited to what's required by that client. So
That's right. And look,
yeah.
and I've always had a view that you have to respect people. People have the right to choose where they spend their money, right?
Yeah.
And the moment we forget that, we're in trouble. So if someone doesn't want to shop with us for whatever reason, they don't value what we do for them, or they think we're too expensive, or whatever. I mean, you're not going to please everyone. That's their choice, and you can't take it personally because a lot of times they're your friends as well in a rural community.
Yeah.
So you have to learn to just do your best. If you do it well, you're going to get a fair share of the market. You're never going to get it all.
Yeah. But Gerard, 20 years in building DeltaAg, now sold to Elders, but still operating. You as a managing director, still operating, independently as Delta Agribusiness. Over that journey, when did it become a beast that was beyond your control and Chris's control as the two founders?
I don't think it got to that. No, we've never felt that. In
Haven't
fact,
you?
No, not at all. In fact, when we started this process that eventuated in the sale to Elders, we had no intention to sell 100% of the business.
Didn't you?
So we bought Odyssey Private Equity
in 2019,
right? Now that was worth spending a few minutes on that because that was, again, a critical decision that took us 2 years to land on because private equity, as you know, can be very good or very bad for you.
So why did you bring him in?
Few reasons. We were growing quickly. We still had no debt. In 19, we had 28 branches in New South Wales.
Yes.
Great business. But the whole of if you remember 18, 19, the first half of 20 was horrendous drought.
Very tough.
And that's the first time in my career that the whole state has been in. So we had the drought cornered. We had every branch in drought. And,
yes.
and, we didn't lose money, but, and again, thank God we had the balance sheet we did because we were under no financial stress, right? And we actually did take on some growth opportunities. But it became very clear to us that we really needed to broaden our wing. We needed to create, a more diverse geographic footprint. And we could see massive opportunities. Another big thing that I've done over the years, and a lot of people do, is build great networks. And I think that's one of my strengths is my ability to do that, and networks of people in competitor camps as well that you meet on all sorts of supplier trips or whatever, right? So you meet them, you form a relationship, keep them warm, stay in touch, so that when they want to do something, you actually get a call or get a seat at the table.
What's the essence that makes you a good networker? And why do you do it?
I think it's just you've got to be a good communicator. You've got to be genuine and warm. You've got to actually be interested in people. Yeah. And I think, and I'm always you're always thinking about if you're passionate about your business, thinking about the future, and and this give you an example. Steve Cameron, Northwest Ag, it was their first big acquisition. I went on a trip to India with one of our suppliers, with Steve, in 2007, and got on really well with him, maintained a relationship. He was, in the AgLink group, so a competitor group. But when he came to do something, we got a seat at the table because of that long-term relationship.
Yes.
David Gray, the WA business we bought, which was a big entry into WA. I met Warren. We went to the World Cup rugby in London with one of our suppliers, and got to know him there. Again, formed a relationship, stayed in touch. He was in AgLink as well, right? So you'd think literally another AgLink member would buy those businesses, but just getting back to that networking, making sure that it's all about trust. People want to deal with people. Doesn't matter whether it's those sorts of deals or with a customer or with a supplier. It's relationships and trust. And so I think it's just, I've always been, interested in people and a voracious networker because I think I've seen the benefits over the years, and I just like people.
Today, there's a bit of a feel around networking that I only want to network with someone if I want something.
And
I think that's the worst turn off, right?
Absolutely.
But there's a longer term position around.
And you do it for genuine reasons. And if it gives you an opportunity down the track, well, great. But that's not why you do it. I do it socially just as much as I do, in situations like that. But and I always tell my kids, you haven't got to be the smartest guy in the room or person in the room, but you've got to be able to communicate well.
Yeah.
And it's really important. Private
Speaking
equity.
about communication, you were communicating with private equity. So you took them on
Yeah,
board.
so you asked me why we did that. A few reasons. One was we could see the opportunities abroad in other states to get away from, to give us some more diversity and less exposure to New South Wales. That was going to take capital. Conservative with our balance sheet, as you know. Second thing was we were growing quickly, and we started to get a lot of our earlier shareholders start to retire.
Right.
And so we've still got 81 shareholders across the company now, but there's quite a few out of that 132 that are retired.
Yeah.
When a private company is growing fast and you've got these employees coming in and some wanting to get out, it's really important to keep liquidity.
And that's a bit of a tricky thing in a private company, right? You're not listed, so it's really only what the supply and demand of those shareholders
and the capacity of the other shareholders, right?
Yeah.
Now, not everyone wants all their eggs in one basket, so it's not necessarily capacity, but sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Well, we didn't want to get into a situation where all of a sudden we had someone who, and the company was getting very valuable at this stage. And the DRP price was going up and up, and we could see the value growing. So, we didn't want a retired shareholder coming through and dropping $10 or $15 million worth of shares on the table and saying, "Oh, I'm out. I want you to buy my shares."
Yeah.
Because what happens is if you get an overhang of shares and a lack of liquidity, does a few things. They just keep discounting the price till they get what they want.
Yeah.
Which goes against what we're trying to do in creating value.
Because it destroys the balance sheet rather. Or
well, it doesn't
diminishes.
no, it doesn't do that. But what it does, it lowers the I guess the subjective value of the company in other shareholders' eyes.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And demotivates.
Yeah.
It also would stop. We've potentially stopped new staff coming in if they saw a company where you got no liquidity and, well, okay, it's all right to get in, but how do I get out?
Yeah. Where's my exit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to have that liquidity, and we've up until 19, we'd always had plenty of capacity to take out the shareholders that needed to sell. And so we didn't want that situation to arise, and that were the main reasons. And we really just wanted a cornerstone non-controlling shareholder so that we could take these opportunities like Northwest Ag, David Gray's and others on without leverage. And so they took a 15% equity stake up front, which was great. They didn't actually put any money in. They bought those shares off the existing shareholders.
Right.
And that was a bit of a sweetener for everyone saying, look, we've worked hard for whatever years it was, 14 years. Here's an opportunity to get a bit off the table, but we're keeping most in and we're going to keep going.
Yeah.
They then put another chunk of capital aside in an equity commitment facility that they guaranteed would sit there for us to help us with acquisitions.
Right.
So then we used that money over the next few years with Northwest Ag and David Gray's. So they went from 15 to 24% roughly by the time we sold to Elders. And so the trick was getting the right ones, right? So great people, Odyssey.
The trick was getting the right private equity firm. Yeah.
Odyssey Private Equity, mid-market PE firm, George Penklis and Gareth Banks. George was one of the founders of Quadrant.
Know both those dudes. Yeah. Gareth, I've dealt
from Champ
pretty regularly. Yeah, with Champ. Yeah.
Great guys. They joined our board. They gave us good strategic perspective and a different way of looking and thinking of things. They were hands-off operationally, which is what we wanted.
Yeah.
We wanted a minority shareholder. We didn't want to be loaded up with debt like the private equity can do, and they didn't do that. They put no pressure on. We didn't want to strip costs out in a tough year, and they didn't do that, which is good. And we didn't want to just get dressed up for sale in 3 years' time, right? We wanted to continue our growth.
Were you nervous about all those things though, going in, like because
a little bit, but that process took 6 months. And
beauty parade, was it? Like
I did. We used a corporate advisory firm, a boutique one, and I probably sat down with 20 different parties.
Yeah, right.
Before we landed on Odyssey.
And Odyssey, looking back then, what was the value they saw? How did they value the business, and what were the value elements they saw to you?
Well, it was their first investment in ag, and they had no experience in ag, and I think it scared the hell out of them, to be honest. And I think because it didn't rain for 9 months, and George thought it was never going to rain again. and he thinks he's a genius now. I mean, he gets it. Just add water.
Yeah,
that's his motto. And it's pretty true.
That's ag. Yeah.
That's ag. It's cyclical.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they were comfortable with us. I think all private equity investments, yes, the business has to have track record, it has to have strong cash flows, it has to have some sort of strategic advantage and growth. They want to see a growth
They
opportunity.
wanted to see a growth track.
Want to see a growth track,
Yeah.
which we had enormous growth track. We
Yeah.
had demonstrated a strong growth path, but a lot ahead.
Yeah.
So they want to see growth, but the main thing they focus on is the management team and the people, and do they trust you? And we formed a very good relationship very early on.
Yeah.
And look, and to be fair, same with us. I mean, I got George and Gareth, particularly George, heavily involved in those big acquisitions because I wanted him to own that decision as much as me.
Yes, of course.
And being a big shareholder and being a director.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And that's rather than sit there and go, well, let's keep these shareholders
people in the back.
Yeah, and this is, we'll do it our way. I think it's really important to bring them in along the journey so that when you get to the final board paper on an acquisition, they're all over it. And it's really just...
It shouldn't be a surprise, the decision.
No, they've been part of it. So they were terrific partners, and I'd highly recommend... And again, everyone's scared of taking on private equity in small business or, in businesses. At the time, we were valued at about 20% or less, 15% of what we ended up selling for. But going back to your question, we didn't intend to sell the whole business to elders. Odyssey are a 10-year fund.
Yes.
So it's a closed end. They have to give their money back to their investors at some stage, and they were approaching that 3 years ago. Like they had 4 or 5 years left, but they never leave it to the last minute.
No.
And they don't get their carry till they sell, right? So there's an incentive for them to do it. But so we our view was, let's get another cornerstone shareholder like Odyssey, but so Odyssey can get their money out, replace them with another culturally aligned.
Yeah,
you're a much bigger business by then, so different pool of private equity we had to talk to, and overseas interests as well. And really, we wanted to take another liquidity event because of the retiring shareholders, and we wanted to take another chunk off, but we wanted to keep somewhere between 20 and 40%.
Yes.
So we were prepared to sell a controlling stake this time around.
Yeah. Okay.
But we actually really wanted to stay independent and private, and initially we didn't. The corporate advisory firm we used, UBS, we didn't invite elders to the table early on because we wanted to say it wasn't what we wanted to do.
No.
But as that journey progressed, we realised, and we had a lot of overseas interest and a number of offers, but everyone's scared of drought, and they just don't understand the cyclical nature of the market.
Yeah.
And so they build a lot of risk into their what they're prepared to offer, and they take a long time. That's more to the point. Not so much the value. I mean, we had some good values put to us, but it's the time they take to get their mind around Australian ag, particularly if they're from the US or Japan or somewhere, and cautious. So, and when the elders eventually came to the table via UBS, it was, if I look back on it, they were the natural owner of the business, to be honest, because...
Why was it?
Well, they live and breathe it. They understand it. Where we're strong, that's where their gaps were in their retail business. We've got a different business. We've got a very strong agronomy consultancy-based business.
So is that where the advisory agronomy side has really come to the fore?
Absolutely. And our precision ag offering is, I think, market leading. We've got things in our suite that drive our business and our margins and our sustainability. And geographically, where we're strong, that's where most of their gaps are. There's the odd exception, but for them, it was, I think, a perfect fit strategically. If you think about where their real strengths have been over their 186 years, whatever it is, it's livestock, it's wool, it's real estate, it's insurance, it's finance. They're a very strong agency business. Yes, they've got a large retail business and they've got some great performers in that business, but it's not the strongest part of their business.
Was the agency element of their business a real benefit for Delta? Was that, I'm looking the other way?
Well, no, because we're going to stay separate, standalone, independent, and that's a critical thing to understand. We're keeping our brand, our culture, all our people. There's no back-end synergies other than backward integration through our private labels.
So you're effectively two separate businesses.
We're going to compete with them head on, just like we were, and we are, because of those cultural differences, the service offering differences, the brand, to protect that goodwill and that value, they're smart enough to realise. And Mark Allison, the CEO, I've known a long time. He actually sat on our Channels board for a little while back in those Wesfarmers days.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Talk about networking. Eh?
Well, he's a smart, good guy, and we've worked together before, so that gave us both a lot of comfort to be able to do a deal.
Yeah.
And obviously Chris as well was on that board, and we've had a good relationship for all those years. But he's seen the mistakes of the past where pre his time where elders may buy a business and just integrate it and turn it upside down, and all of a sudden they lose the good people and
That's right.
the goodwill evaporates, right? This is a large transaction. We're proud of what we've created. We very desperately want to maintain our culture going forward and the business as it is, not just for our people but for our customers as well and suppliers.
But are you nervous about that? Because 186 years of elders, like they're an icon of an Australian company. Been through all sorts of.
I think the second oldest company in Australia.
Yeah, like it's amazing, right? I mean, in one sense, you are and should be very proud to be eyed off and purchased by such an icon of Australian ag.
Thank you. Yeah.
But on the other side, they've got their own culture and they're their own beast, right? So how are you gonna maintain that Delta Agribusiness culture and the specialness that you have built and you've been talking to us about?
Look, I think really just by staying independent and just taking the business forward. So Chris and I and the senior people, we're staying on for a number of years. We've got no intention of just exiting left. We want to make sure that, to your question, that succession comes from within. Right? It's really important for us, but also for the business going forward, that someone isn't just, people just aren't parachuted in to run this business who don't come from our DNA. And we've got a lot of talent in the company, so we want to make sure, we want to bring that forward and make sure that happens. We've got an independent board. Doug's stayed on.
Yes,
Doug's remained on the board as independent director, and that says a lot up front. So I report to the elders, to the Delta board, not to the elders board.
Yeah,
and of course Mark and the CFO Paul is on our board, but we've got 4 and they've got 2. But yes, they own the company. But at the end of the day, that board will make common sense decisions in the interests of the Delta business. And we'll leverage the strengths of elders at the back end, particularly through procurement and through our private label businesses, 100%. And there's a lot of uplift and a lot of opportunity there, and that's where the real synergies are.
Yes.
We'll work with them on their finance offerings, and under our brand though. We'll work with them on real estate, but again under our brand.
Yeah.
So we'll leverage a lot of that capacity and experience and back end support, but keep it very much, as a Delta offering. So it's going to give us more firepower, more strength, particularly with those agency products.
Yes.
And I see a huge amount of upside in what we can do going forward. But keeping that culture and maintaining our autonomy is key, within obviously sensible delegation of authority, sensible corporate governance stuff.
Now, not disclosing the numbers, but often evaluation is based on sustainable earnings and the growth track, as you've intimated with the PE side of things, but also the synergies. And you've just talked about a range of synergies there.
Yeah.
Is that, when the Elders deal came together, it was a mix of all those things?
They paid a multiple that was, I think was fair. It was, I guess that's the benefit of building a big business like we have, and a national footprint with a lot of strategic offerings, particularly the agronomy and precision ag and other things. You attract a higher multiple than you would if you were just a smaller independent, obviously. So you get more of a public company type multiple, because otherwise we wouldn't do a deal. Why would we do it? Why would we
You'd
do
stay
it?
in and
we didn't need to sell the business. We had no debt, as you know. We weren't looking to raise capital. No. So we were never going to do a deal that was not going to be good for our shareholders.
Yeah.
But also I think the way it was priced is good for their shareholders as well. And the synergies, I think, are very conservative that Mark's board. I think very conservative.
Yeah.
I think over time we'll outperform those enormously, and Delta will continue to grow. I think because we are going to keep our brand and culture, we'll still be, I think, a go-to company for, if you think about it, there's still something like 12 or 1,500 independents out there. And they're getting older. Most of them haven't got an exit strategy.
You see that as an active market of opportunity, right?
Yeah. Now, of course, the ACCC, making things tougher, but one of the learnings out of the process we had to go through, again, it's a fabricated market. Every local market is different and has different dynamics. It's not a national market by any means, like supermarkets are.
Yeah.
So, where it makes sense for us to grow, obviously we'll have to get their approval going forward on future growth opportunities, but there's still lots of areas where Elders / Delta don't have strong presence. It's a big country.
And look, the growth. I mean, I've looked at some of your graphs over the 20 years, and I mean, they're amazing. The top line retail sales growth, roughly 30% CAGR year on year.
Yeah.
Your earnings growth, similar sort of level over the period, which is easy to say, right? And it bounces about a bit, which
right.
it should.
It does, yeah.
But reflecting on that private equity move, you were growing from 2006 to 2019, but the step up from 19 to now, as a result of those investments in other states,
it's pretty enormous.
It's pretty enormous. It's a major uplift. Was that challenging, managing that growth and also ensuring that there were positive earnings as a result of it?
Look, you're right, and there's a big uplift. Started with Northwest Ag in Victoria, 14 branches.
Yes.
Fantastic business, and then David Gray's. The answer is making sure that the integration goes smoothly and well, and so obviously the shareholder model aligns the care factor.
So we're
on both
coming
sides,
back to that, aren't we?
right? Because both those transactions and the Cox Rural one after that, and lots of others, all had significant equity. Right?
Yeah. Yes.
So number one, you got the people on board, and you've got them there for at least the medium term, if not the long term.
Yeah.
And they're all riding, and they all of a sudden they see where we can go together if we make this work. Then it comes down to bench strength in terms of execution, right? So having strong CFO, which we do, and support in that the finance and accounting team, and our systems and admin people that do the inventory management across the business. What we do, we bring all our businesses onto our platform.
Yes.
The only exception across the whole business is the WA business, and I'll come to that in a sec.
Right.
Because it's a wholesale business primarily, and so it's different.
Yes.
There's different requirements. But for instance, Northwest Ag or Cox Rural or others, those 14 branches in Victoria, it's a big job, integrating them off something they're used to because they've been going for 30, 40 years as well onto our systems. And then, but it's amazing the people in the Delta business that put their hand up to go travel for weeks at a time and go and sit in those branches for the first 4 to 6 weeks.
To bring them up to speed.
Yeah, to support them.
Yeah.
To support them at the point of sale, to teach them how to use our system and all the tricks and all the shortcuts.
Yeah.
So you just managing that is critical. If you get your team offside up front through a bad integration of systems, you lose them.
But what's the key thing about the system? Is it simply the integrity of the intelligence and the numbers and what's happening?
You have to know live every day, live across the whole business what's going on from inventory, for your working capital, daily margin reports. So when a branch manager gets to the office every morning, he's got a margin report on his email, which basically shows what he sold the day before by customer, by product, and then margin, and so. And he knows, that branch manager knows that someone else is looking at that in the inventory team and the procurement team. So if he sold something for too high a margin or too low a margin, it gets questioned. So it comes down to habit forming disciplines. So, and you've got to have everyone on one system for that. It's for bank rec. So one bank rec across the company, balanced 7 o'clock every night. You got to have your bank rec done every day. These are the things we learnt from the Wesfarmers, right?
Well, I was going to reflect back to that.
Yeah.
Was that really where you took out those learnings?
Yeah, because to give you an example, not all business, but most acquisitions we've made and I won't say all because I don't want to offend anyone because
No.
they've all been fantastic businesses, but you can typically double the profit of a business within 1 or 2 years with the same revenue and the same people
Really?
by bringing the public company standard systems in the back end and stop losing stock. Stop. It's a huge amount of. Most businesses don't know what they're losing in terms of leakage through not invoicing, through not actually for not goods inwards,
Yes.
lack of discipline around paying for stuff they didn't get or paying for stuff twice,
Yes.
not getting rebate reconciliations right. A huge
Yes.
amount of rebates in our industry.
Yeah.
Suppliers are not great at giving you
Not being
reconciliations for an obvious reason.
disciplined around collecting them and what have
You have to know what your rebates are because if you rely on suppliers to tell you, you won't get the right amount all the time. Some are better than others. So it's and just not lose. Think about fertilizer, right? We sell 300,000 tonne of fertilizer, and most of it goes direct factory farm.
Yeah.
You lose a truckload of fertilizer, you don't see it. It doesn't come through the shop. You lose a truckload of fertilizer, you're talking 20, 30 grand. And when you're moving hundreds of trucks every day around the network, you can lose stock very easily. And so we essentially what we sell today, we count tomorrow. We do daily stock takes across the business. And then we do a weekly bin, which a bin location it might be the ag chem or it might be animal health. And so we're not just doing the big annual stock take, we're doing daily stock takes on everything. So, your line variances or your discrepancies, we've got some really strict benchmarks around that. And so if you get that right, then your staff get proud of their stock integrity as well.
Yes.
And we share a lot of inventory around the network because, we haven't got a company full of joint ventures or we haven't got a remuneration structure that is such that, like some of our competitors have profit shares by branch, right? Now that to us creates selfish behaviour and
where you've got an employed situation right across.
Yeah, we don't do that because I've seen that in the landmark days, if there's again, not picking on them, everyone can run their own business, but if a branch is being remunerated through the profit of his store only, they're not going to share stock with a neighbouring branch.
Great silos, so to speak, in the ag vernacular, yeah.
So one team, one dream we talk about. We share stock. We don't care where the customer buys it as long as we get the sale. We don't get emotional around that. We reward our people on value creation.
Yeah.
And we pay them what they're worth and we reward them in value creation.
And are they, I'm spraying about a bit here, but we touched on keeping employment and shareholding separate. So how is their performance managed versus the shareholding side?
Well, the shareholding is completely separate. So the performance management has to operate like any other large company. But what we do, because it's impossible to sit down and have one-on-ones with 500 people and do it on time, right? So we have a system from branch manager down so the branch managers get their reviews, but everyone below them, which is a huge number of staff, we have a system called continuous improvement. So our view is a manager should be talking to their staff member or members on a daily basis about things they do well or things they don't do so well. Because if you think about the annual review process where people have a template and they fill out their sit down with the manager and all they really care about is the last 3 minutes when they talk about remuneration.
That's a bit of a box ticking exercise.
Well, they see it as a salary review, not a performance review, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's what they care about.
Yeah.
So, but by then, if you do that once a year, and that's if you're on time with it, and sometimes they drag out because everyone's busy.
Yes.
Then you've forgotten all the stuff that needs talking about.
Yeah.
They're not going to bring it up.
Yeah.
And so our view is don't have these sit-down performance reviews because that's all about money. Separate remuneration out from performance.
Yes.
And then do that daily. And we expect our people to manage their people daily on the good or bad. And then obviously for the senior roles, we have a more formal process.
Oh, I love that though.
Yeah.
Look, Gerard, I mean, the care factor, it's hard to get, but if you've got it, it's a special culture. But if you've also got continuous improvement in its true form, it's like an engine that keeps running.
Yeah.
And it's part of sustainable earnings from a valuer's perspective, right? Because it's not something you can buy off the shelf or institute in a review program.
No.
It's a way of doing things. But it's key to building value. If you look back right back to 2006 and up to today. When did the business lose its heavy reliance on you and Chris
Oh,
as founders, so to speak?
operationally, you mean, day to day?
Yeah.
Well, Chris is still he's still handling a number of agronomy clients. So he's
Yeah.
he's essentially, we're essentially running the business together along with our CFO Matt and other senior people, HR manager and others. So he's still very much engaged on the ground for, let's say, 30-40% of his time.
Yes.
Which is great because he also runs the agronomy and advisory team nationally. So he's still got large clients. He's not kicking the clods himself still.
Well, it's a major part of your value proposition.
Yeah, he's not disengaged or distant to what's really going on. I spend as much time as I can in Young head office. I love, I don't. In the early days, I was doing procurement as well for the first 3 or 4 years. I was a jack of all trades, like you are when you're building a business.
Yeah.
But became pretty obvious. Again, seeing how the landmarks of the world run these centralised procurement functions and dedicated functions, we built that capacity into our business across procurement, HR, IT, finance and accounting.
Yeah.
So that we don't have admin people in branches. It's all done here in Sydney. All the AP and everything's done down here.
Yeah.
But I still spend as much time as I can just leaning over the back of a ute talking to a grower.
Why? Why is
Because
that? Surely you don't have to do that. Surely you've got a bunch of people in the business.
But I grew up I grew up as a farmer. They're our clients. They're our friends. There's nothing better than chewing the fat out, particularly for someone who drives in the shop I've known for 20, 30, 40 years, might have been a customer at Mine Eagle, or their son or daughter.
Yeah.
I think it's important. Doesn't matter how big you are, you've got to stay engaged and you've got to know what's going on the ground.
Yeah.
You can't become removed. And that's bureaucracy. That's, you can't have levels of management that you if I go to a national conference and sit down and do a Q&A with staff, with Chris and I and Matt, we'll do a Q&A, or I'm talking to our team, our managers. They've got to know that I know what's going on. I've still got to be able to sit down and raise a purchase order or a sales invoice if I want to.
I think that's great to hear, right? Because in business value and sort of business transactions, owner concentration and owner risk is often, quite a theme, and it can be negative and it can be positive.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing that you've helped us understand here is that you've still got a very hands-on, close role in the business and what's going on, but you've also got an ownership that means that you've got a bunch of your people throughout the country energized to also be owners, so to speak. So in a funny sort of way, well, not in a funny way, in an interesting way, you've dealt with that risk.
Yeah, I think so.
To a degree.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been a wonderful journey, and I'd say, it's been a team effort. This business, a success of Delta has not been around 2, 3, 5 or 10 or even 20 people. It's been a lot of great people.
Yeah.
With a broad range of skill sets. That trust, loyalty, friendship and commitment are the things that have held us together. And, I think back on, we've got some of the key people that were with us in the Chandler's business are still with us today.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, like Tim Condon, John Fisher, Kevin Holt, like these people been with us for more than 20, 30 years as well.
Yeah.
And our wives are friends, our kids are friends. I mean, you think about, it's a strong DNA that's come through, and we've taken with the model, the Shareholder model, we've been able to extrapolate that across the business, that type of cultural feel.
Yes.
And loyalty, I guess it is, and care. And that's our secret sauce. I think is.
Yeah, that's delightful. Let me ask you, what are your fondest moments over that journey, the 4 decades, but particularly the last couple with building DeltaAg?
I think initially, when we set Delta up, a lot of people thought we were foolish and we'd fail, and so I think proving a few people wrong at the time is always satisfying in a humble, nice sort of way. You don't say anything. You don't. I mean, we had suppliers literally in the first 2 or 3 years that they wanted to deal with us, but they were under so much pressure from our competitors not to deal with us that they used to park their car in the Big W car park.
Rather than be seen near
Yeah,
you.
yeah, and walk around. They didn't want their car seen in our car park. That's true. That's a true story.
Yeah.
That's how emotional things were.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to actually get past that was the first one.
Yeah.
But the thing I'm most proud of, and I would say Chris and the others are as well, is the shareholder model and the value that a lot of people got out of that. It's been life changing.
Yeah.
Not just for them, but for their kids.
Yeah.
And that gives us a lot of pleasure because
you've created wealth, but you've spread wealth.
Oh, absolutely. And look, it's spread far and wide, and that's really satisfying because they were part of the journey. They all helped us to do what we've done and create what we've been able to do, and that's probably I think I reflect on it. The thing I'm most proud of is the fact that people trusted us to put their money into the business.
Yeah,
and they've got the rewards.
Yeah, that's lovely. And the three biggest learnings, if you had your time over again, reflecting on that period, are there things that you'd do differently or that you've learnt that are absolutely key to the success?
I don't think we do too much differently, to be honest. I mean, I think one of the things you learn as you go along, in managing large teams because they get larger, is you have to be decisive around hard decisions. Like if something's not working with, or particularly with managing people,
yes,
it's easy to tolerate some bad attitude or bad culture at times, or underperformance for lots of reasons. Sometimes they might hold a heap of client relationships.
Yeah,
right? Often that's the case.
And you think, well, what would we do if we lost that?
Well,
person?
This guy's actually not living up to our values, but if he leaves, he's going to take $20 million worth of business with him. And so the thing about regional Australia and the lack of depth of talent,
yes,
say talent is just a shrinking pool. It's hard to have consequences without having loss of business.
It is,
right. That's one of our challenges. So I think one of the things we've learned is you've got to be decisive, and we probably could have moved on some things sooner than we did. In retrospect, but again, that's not an easy decision to make, and every situation is different. So look, if someone does something really bad, obviously it's black and white.
Sure, but it's often the grey that's the issue. Yeah.
And that's probably one thing. I think I don't think there's too much sort of change in my journey, to be honest. I think it's been very satisfying and fulfilling.
And it should be. The world's very complex. It seems very complex. How do you create a team, an offering, a culture that breaks down that complexity and helps your clients with simple solutions?
Yeah, well, one of the things we've got in our core values, right? We've got some of the normal ones that people have, like integrity, commitment, innovation. But one that we put in there, which to your question, is common sense. It's actually one of our core values.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. People say, "Oh, well, the thing about common sense is it's not that common," but it's amazing if you get a tricky situation or a complex. Someone rings me up and says, "Well, I've got this really tricky situation. It might be an ethical grey area, or it might be they might need to do something that's slightly outside the rules, but needs approval."
Yes.
Typically, if you ask the question, well, what's the common sense answer here? Is that if it's the accounting team or finance team who want to just use a blunt hammer to say, no, you can't do it that way because that's not the way we do it.
Yeah.
But the alternative solution is going to really upset a client. Sorry.
And
there's a workaround. Well, to me, that's common sense, right? As long as we're not compromising integrity. Common sense solves most problems.
So is that being pragmatic but not compromising integrity, as you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Pragmatic's another word for common sense.
But is it hard to breed in a team, in a business? Like
not if
you might have common sense.
Not if you talk about it a lot.
Okay.
And we talk about it all the time. We talk about our values and our purpose a lot every time we meet as groups and as conferences. And I just think if people know that the company has a bit of flex and a bit of common sense, they don't try and hide stuff.
Yeah.
If you have this really strict you shall not breach this rule.
Yeah.
And you need that for certain things, obviously, but people get creative and they'll try and hide mistakes or problems or try and solve it themselves and get into a bigger mess.
Yeah.
So we encourage people to bring their problems forward, and
that's your care factor issue.
Yeah, and then look for a common sense solution.
Yeah.
That gives everyone, particularly the client, the right outcome.
I love that. Gerard, thank you for joining us on Let's Talk Business.
It's a pleasure.
I've really enjoyed listening to your story, and very proud of what you've achieved. Congratulations.
Thanks,
on
James.
the journey to date. I know it's not over by any means.
No, I'm not going anywhere.
It's an exciting new chapter in terms of Delta's position with elders and the opportunities that lie ahead. So
thank you. I really appreciate it, and the opportunity to come on and have a chat about our journey. And again, very proud of our team. It's been a team effort.
Thanks, Gerard.
Thank you.